This episode of the Senior Rehab Podcast is sponsored by the Academy of Geriatric Physical Therapy. AGPT's mission is to further your ability to provide best practice physical therapy and to advocate for optimal aging. Falls are a big deal with our patient population, but do you find yourself struggling to manage or even prevent falls with your patients? You should check out AGPT's clinical guidance statement on the management of falls in community-dwelling older adults. This paper gives you a clear direction, recommendations, and action steps so you can help your patients. You can get this article for free and learn about how the AGPT can further your clinical practice at geriatricspt.org/SRP. Hit me!
This is a Senior Rehab Podcast, the podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
Hey everyone, welcome to the State of the SNF. This month I wanted to try something a little bit different. Instead of our usual interviews, which I promise we're going to go back to next month, I wanted to talk a little bit about some things that I've been seeing and hopefully spark a conversation that we can continue later on. So, bear with me because it's going to seem like we go off topic a little bit, but I promise you, we are coming back to the State of the SNF. Here we go. Twitter. I know what you're thinking. How does this tie back in to geriatric PT? Hear me out. I joined Twitter as a way to follow PT research, to gain some new ideas, get reinvested in the geri PT world, increase my access to others, to have conversations about what I'm seeing in the clinic, where we're going clinically, and what's coming down with research. And whether you think overall that Twitter is a force for good, or if it just causes trouble, if it's helpful or harmful, you can't deny that if there's something you want to talk about, there's someone on Twitter arguing passionately about it. Anything. The big focus in the PT sphere, besides, let's face it, our student loans, resoundingly, is social determinants of health. Whether you're an outpatient, geriatric, pediatrics, women's health, we're all staring at a society faced with costly healthcare bills, shortening life expectancy and uncertainty at every angle. But where in this do we, the SNF therapists, fit? How can those of us who are so deeply involved in the medical aspects of physical therapy have any effect on the social aspects? Let's start with the frequent flyers, shall we? You all know the frequent flyers. We all have them. Those patients who just keep coming back. I can tell you, and I bet you could tell me, who is probably going to be back just based on their discharge plan. And how frustrating is that? To sit there and know at discharge, most likely this is just not going to work. So let's talk about, why do they come back? What does their discharge situation look like? Do they have the familial or the social support in place that they need to go home safely? Are they compliant with their medications? Are they compliant with their medications? Or rather, are they not compliant with their medications because they're lazy? Or are they not compliant because they can't afford their medications? Are they not compliant because they can't get their medications? They are physically unable to attain them. Are they going home and falling because they have no ability to alter their environment because there's no one to install grab bars? Do they have any kind of support system in place? These are the social determinants of health that we as geriatric therapists really need to be taking a look at. For those of you in the Academy of Geriatric Physical Therapy, you may have seen this month's President's message, and you may have noticed that it's a challenge. It's a challenge to us, the geri PTs, whether we're in the SNF or home health, or if you're treating older adults in an outpatient setting. It's a challenge to increase our level of advocacy. Advocacy, I know, is a loaded term. We just want to come in and do our jobs and do the best that we can for our patients. And we don't want to be mired down in the muck of politics and social policy and all of that messiness. But those are where the social determinants of health lie. And if we want to address that, we need to be willing to wade into this. Cash practice seems like a wonderful, sexy idea. Here's the solution to all our insurance problems. But let's be honest, most of our patients rely on Medicare. That's who needs us. That's where we're at. And if we're giving up on them because it's a challenge, what good are we really doing? And how are we addressing their social issues? How can we sit there and say that we want to address social determinants of health if we're not even willing to take on the challenges of insurance because it's just so much easier to take cash? How are we helping those who need us if we're turning people away? A healthy, functioning Medicare system is what will allow our patients who really need us to have access. That's what's going to allow us to keep our doors open and to get people healthier and to address the issues that they're having medically and socially. So I join Greg Hartley in his challenge to you. Let's take the time to learn more about pending Medicare changes. Let's dig into our communities and see what services, programs, and access people need. Really, let's push for clinicians on these panels. How are they having panels that address Medicare changes that aren't having practicing clinicians on them? Don't they want to hear what we have to say? I can tell you where the waste is. I can tell you where the money needs to be, and I can tell you where we're throwing it away, and I bet you can too. We all could, and we need to push for that. Let's learn about pending changes to CMS. Let's get comfortable speaking up. We're in a position to affect social determinants of health for generations. Because it's not only the current older adults, but it's ourselves as we grow into it. And it's our children, and it's our neighbors, and it's our communities as they grow into these age groups. Like we've said before, ageism only hurts our future selves. And the fear of being involved only hurts our future selves. We can't be afraid to go for it if we really want to make a difference. I want to go back to Twitter real quick. So there was a recent article being passed around from the New England Journal of Medicine, which addressed the idea of counteracting burnout with community building. We've all seen the articles about burnout. How do you counteract burnout? You get a massage, you take a day off, you go on a vacation. This article looked at something much deeper. This article was looking at the idea of working together in our communities to address the social determinants of health so that we don't have to keep fighting the same battles. Because if we can solve the problems upstream, how much easier will it be for us in the end? I don't want it to seem like I think I have all the answers, because I don't. I have as many questions as I ever started with, and I have as much insecurity and as much uncertainty about where I'm going as I ever have. But what I want is for this conversation to continue, because I feel like we're getting somewhere. The more we talk to each other, even if we disagree, even if we're all going to passionately argue about a bazillion different things, the more voices we hear, the more we're going to solve these problems. The more we can celebrate things like Summer of Move and encouraging movement and the goals of the Senior Rehab Project to bring more evidence-based practice and more strengthening and more challenge to geriatric care. All of that comes from these conversations. And none of us can ever feel like we have the answers, because the answers are going to come from us collectively talking and talking and talking. So the one big part of this article that really stuck with me, and actually, to be honest, it's a tiny little blurb in the article, but for me it made all the difference. It was a real short story that was just thrown in. And here's how it goes. A group of friends are out for a hike in the woods. They come upon a fast-moving river where another group of hikers has fallen in, and they're struggling against the current. So our group jumps in to help rescue them, and they're working to pull the other people out of the river. And as they're struggling and as they're trying to save these people, more people keep coming downstream. And the rescue seems chaotic and never ending. And they keep having to shift focuses and change tactics. And after a while, one of the group gets up and starts to run along the banks. "Where are you going? We need you here," her friends shout. And she stops briefly and looks at them. "I'm going," she yells back, "to find out why people keep falling in." Go. Find out why people keep falling in. And report back so we can stop this chaos and get a plan and move forward. Because isn't that what we all want? And isn't that really where we're hoping the state of the SNF brings us?
Hit me! Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. If you only listen to these podcast episodes, you are missing out on 90% of the Senior Rehab Project. Hop on over to seniorrehabproject.com where you can join the movement that's advancing care for older adults. You can join for free or become a part of the Game Changers where you can get some free gear and access to our monthly meetup. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com. I appreciate y'all, and I'll talk with you soon. But in the meantime, do not forget to stay funky.